Welcome, everyone, back to The View from Here, Behind Enemy Lines. We have with us Gregory Wrightstone, who's an author and a geologist, first and foremost, and an author of the book called A Very Convenient Warming. A modest warming and more CO2 are benefiting humanity, contrary to what the lamestream media has been telling us.
So it's not an inconvenient truth.
Well, we will provide the inconvenient facts here. And it's inconvenient for the alarmists and Greta Thunberg and John Kerry.
Have you ever spoken at the Lehigh Valley Tea Party?
I have.
I knew I recognized you. Yeah, I was there at I think it was 2024.
Yeah, Michael told me he was very impressed with you back then.
Right. Actually,
hopefully he is now too.
What I want our audience to know is that this gentleman, Gregory, will present to you proof that we're just fine, and in some ways even better, in a simple, non-crazy, like out of this world way.
Absolutely.
We'll give the floor to you.
Okay. Well, actually, we've been saying for a number of years, the truth will win out. The science and the facts. We have the science and the facts and the data on our side being the non-consensus, man-made driven warming consensus opinion. And, but the science doesn't support that. The science, and I'm a scientist, a geologist, and I lead the CO2 Coalition, 200 of the top scientists and experts in the world that are just truly visionaries and experts. And I'm very proud. We'll talk a few minutes what the CO2 Coalition is. And I mean, we are true scientists. We have on our board is John Clauser, Nobel laureate in physics. We have William Happer as our chair, emeritus professor of physics at Princeton. And we've got Patrick Moore on our board. He's the co-founder of Greenpeace. And he left Greenpeace a number of years ago, and he sat as our chairman. So these are all people that are true scientists that support critical thinking and the scientific method. And just in the last couple of days, Bill Gates, who's been wildly alarmist, has just come out and he says, "You know what? I've been wrong about this. Terrible crises probably won't happen. We've been wrong about this." And just this morning, Ted Nordhaus of the Breakthrough Institute basically said the same thing. He said that he acknowledges that business as usual scenarios of 5-degree warming by 2100 were never plausible. They assumed absurdly high population growth, unrealistic economics, and slow technological progress. So sooner or later, these guys are going to be proven wrong. And that's what I did. My first book, I believe you have, is Inconvenient Facts. And in that book, I documented that there is no climate crisis. But my most recent book, the title is A Very Convenient Warming, How Modest Warming and More CO2 Are Benefiting Humanity. And in this book, we go further. By almost every metric you look at, Earth's ecosystems are thriving and prospering, and humanity is benefiting from modest warming and more CO2. It's incredible. And these guys, Bill Gates, Ted Nordhaus, and all the others, they can't continue spreading the lies and disinformation that have been going on for decades about false claims of planetary doom due to our excesses of emitting carbon dioxide. And so by everything we look at, man, life is good and getting better. We should celebrate this. There aren't climate crises out there. Deserts are shrinking, forests expanding. Every ecological niche from the near polar regions to the equator are blossoming. Great increases of vegetation growth. And of course, vegetation is the biggest beneficiary of more CO2.
So just like in the science fiction movie The Blob, we're killing the Green New Deal with CO2?
Something like that, yeah. But you know what? You just can't keep making these claims year after year after year, and year after year, the claims is their claim of whatever's going to happen in 2020 By 2017, there was supposed to be no ice on the North Pole. Well, there's as much ice today as there was 13 years ago, almost exactly same amount of
Well,
ice.
according to Al Gore, New York and Florida would have been underwater by now.
Exactly. And what about all those islands in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean and the Caribbean? They were supposed to be underwater by now.
And a lot of them are at sea level.
Yeah. We could talk about that's an interesting subject. If you want to talk about that just right now, go.
Sure.
All right.
Like I said, it's yours to take the conversation wherever you want.
It's a great example of how you and your viewers are being lied to by the establishment. We're being told that all these islands, Tuvalu, the Maldives, and the others are at great risk and will be underwater within a few decades. And there's a picture, of the president of the Maldives standing with his hand, hip deep in water with his hand out because he wants climate reparations. So I can't blame him. I mean, if we're stupid enough to give him $1 billion for no good reason, I'd ask for it too if I was the president of the Maldives, which he did. But the Maldives, this is an island chain of islands. It's a nation chain of islands in the Indian Ocean. And the UN says that the Maldives are one of the most at-risk island nations in the world. As you say, a lot of those islands are only 6 feet above sea level. I think the maximum is like 14 feet. So it's, if sea level's rising, they can convince people that they'll be underwater. But the dirty little secret, here's the rest of the story. The rest of the story is 18,000 years ago, the Maldives were also just above sea level. In the last 18,000 years, sea level has risen 400 feet. Now I'm going to say, what's the question you're wondering right now? Why are they not underwater?
Well, because the ice caps which they claim are melting are actually building up. In the North Pole, I think they were shrinking, but in the North Pole,
the island itself. I'm talking about the islands themselves. Sea level's risen 400 feet, and they're not under 400 feet of water. And so what happens is the coral grows really quickly. I mean, that can keep up with really rapid sea level rise. And the other process is a geologic process known as accretion, that the sands and gravels that ring the islands during storms are washed up onto the beach face and onto the island. Then winds and natural processes distribute that across the island, and the island slowly grows along with sea level. And so we've got probably tens of thousands of these islands all over the earth. They're not underwater, and they're not going to be underwater, because what we see in the Maldives, actually, more than 80% of the islands there are either stable or growing in size. They're not shrinking. So
I'd never thought about that, about the sea bringing more material to make the island higher. I never thought about that part.
Yeah, we've got a new children's. I've got a series of children's books. I've got my latest book is actually a children's book. Chloe the Clownfish Sleeps Well. I call it the Sleep Well series. So in Chloe the Clownfish, she lives with her family on the Great Barrier Reef, and she can't sleep at night because she learned in school that her home on the reef and her family were in terrible danger because of man-made climate change. And so we're able to tell the truth about what's actually happening on the Great Barrier Reef and other reefs around the world through this wonderfully illustrated children's book. And so that book's available on Amazon. If you just search it, $7. You're not going to break the bank, $7. Just search for Chloe the Clownfish. I guarantee it will be your grandchildren's favorite book the night they receive it. And it's wonderfully illustrated by our Brazilian artist, Tiago Hellinger in Brazil. He doesn't speak any English, and I don't speak Portuguese, but we make it work. He's done a wonderful job. But the point is, our next book is just about done. It's called Foxy the Fruit Bat Sleeps Well. And we tell the story of a fruit bat that lives on the Maldives. And we're able to tell the story about, through an entertaining, well-illustrated book, the story of what's going on with these reefs.
I think that's excellent that you're putting to rest these things and directing it towards the children, because it's the children that are being indoctrinated. So this is really good. I want to expand our conversation because you've also done some interviews where you inform people about electronic vehicles and how the batteries are very, very hazardous. As a matter of fact, it's one of Roy's pet peeves. And a lot of people don't realize what a catastrophe these things can perform.
Yeah, the death of the electric vehicles will come quickly. And I'll tell you what's going to trigger it. At some point, somewhere, I'm not hoping for it by any means, these things catch on fire without they just do. The lithium ion batteries are somewhat unstable. And what's going to happen when one catches fire in an underground parking garage underneath an office building or an apartment building? We know they've caught on fire in people's garages and the whole home is consumed. But these things are almost impossible to put out. If it's an underground parking garage, the toxic fumes that are given off by burning lithium-ion batteries are extremely, extremely toxic and deadly. So you couldn't, even if the firemen could get, they may not be able to get to a fire. When that occurs, people are going to go, whoa, let's step back a minute. There are cities in Germany that have banned EVs from their parking garages for that reason.
Is it the temperature? Do they get super hot?
You mean why they catch fire?
In other words, why are they so difficult to put out? Because are they like burning?
Water does not put them out.
Water actually makes them
because it's
burst out in flames.
Yeah, it's really if you see what lithium, it's a metal. It's just very, very different. And again, once they start burning, you can put them out they have blankets that they've developed to put over a burning vehicle if you can get close enough, and that way can cover it. And if it consumes all the oxygen, then there's no more oxygen to burn. So,
isn't there also an issue in gathering up the raw materials to make the batteries that it causes natural damage in that area?
Well, sure. And then, yes, the Congo, they're using child labor to mine these things. And most of the processing, I think it's 90%, 80% is done in China. So even if it's mined elsewhere, it goes through China for the processing. So yeah, these things are, and there's no good reason to force people into electric vehicles. I want to drive a gas-fired powered vehicle. There's just
Japan recently claimed that it had they discovered a way to power electronic vehicles with different batteries that aren't as dangerous as lithium. I mean, do you know anything about that? Have you heard anything?
Well, there are options, but they're not. As far as I know, there's nothing that comes close to the power and the length the amount of power that can be given.
Well, they're claiming it'll last longer. It'll ride longer than lithium batteries. This is the claim. I don't know. I was wondering if you'd heard about it. No, I only heard about it a few days ago.
No, I've not heard anything. I'm suspicious when I hear anything. We've all heard those stories for 50 years about, well, some scientist in Duluth, Minnesota developed this engine that can run on water, and the oil companies bought the patent, and they're sitting on it because and that's just all these.
I don't know if they buy the patent or if they do pull a Hillary Clinton on the inventor.
No, I don't. It wasn't ever done. It's false. There's a lot of pseudoscience out there, even from our side.
What I find interesting is that in the past year, there's been a lot of talk about the fact that petroleum, oil, is actually not a finite resource, that it's constantly being made by the earth, which when I was a kid, we were told, okay, it's dead dinosaurs.
That's not so. You're absolutely categorically wrong, and I'm happy to. I'm a geologist. You're talking about abiogenic oil. It doesn't occur. It does not occur. There is some abiogenic natural gas, methane, but it's a very small component. For example, I think you're calling me from Pennsylvania. You have the Marcellus Shale underneath you there, and that's the source rock for all of the oil and gas above it, all the old fields, were sourced out of the Marcellus, and then the deeper play is the Utica Shale. These are organic rich source beds and the source of the oil and gas. Don't go down this abiogenic trap. I can state very clearly that it's categorically, patently false.
You're the first person to refute it that I've heard.
Well, you haven't had many. Well, you get this bad information. There's
We've been
so many
taught that since we were kids, and we're in our 70s, Mike and I.
Well, if you just let's just look at the Marcellus Shale. If you go out to Western Pennsylvania, it's about 4,000 feet deep, and it's called rich wet gas, okay? Because it's got a lot of these propane, methane, butane. There's liquids in it, along with the Marcellus. But the deeper you go into Pennsylvania, the hotter the temperatures were. And the hotter the temperatures are, it cracks the oil, is what they call it. So the deeper they go, so the rich wet gas, the deeper you go, gets converted completely to methane or dry gas as you go deeper. And that's all related. That's because of the heat of the earth. The deeper you go, the hotter it is. And then the thermal maturity of the rock determines what kind of hydrocarbons that it will create. And so is it fossil fuels? It's kind of an odd terminology. Most of the organic material, which is the source of the oil and source of the gas, really algal blooms that died, sank to the bottom, sank to the bottom over thousands of millions of years, and accumulates in that thick organic rich Marcellus Shale.
Okay.
And that's so our algae fossils, I guess, technically, because we can see in the nano microscopic images we get, we can see the little bits of the algae that are there. So it's very well documented, and the shale gas revolution proves that these are source rocks created naturally, and it's not leaking up from the earth. Like I say, there is some abiogenic natural gas or methane. There's zero oil, and even that small amount, that's not what's driving these. If you look above these source beds, you can see the fields that are above them, because that gas wants to get out and get to the surface really badly.
I've always wondered when I'd see pictures of or drawings of oil deposits in the earth and so forth, how many dinosaurs would have had to have lived and died?
Zero.
Exactly. And who came up with that fairy tale?
Well, I don't know. But when people talked about fossil fuels, people really didn't know much about it. And so there's dinosaur. There are other forms of organic rich shales. We're blessed in Pennsylvania in the United States. We have just the right. It's kind of like the Goldilocks effect. We have just the right kind of organics at just the right depths, and it's not been structurally abused. China, for example, has huge basins full of really organic rich shale, but it's the wrong kind of organic rich shale, and it's called lacustrine. These were lake deposits. They just don't, for whatever reason, that type of organics just don't give up oil or gas.
What about the scare they put into us about people who are living close to where they're fracking? They turn on their faucet and flames come out.
Yeah, well, I actually debated Josh Fox, the producer of Gasland, the movie that promoted that, and that particular iconic photograph. Their water well actually penetrated a coal seam. That's where they're getting their water from. And so they don't reveal that. And of course, there's natural gas in coal seams. And plus, before they even started fracking, many of the homes in it's Dimmock, the area of north central Pennsylvania is the area. Before they started fracking and drilling these wells, they had the same problems. And fracking has proven to be extremely safe. There's not been one documented case of fracking directly harming any water anywhere that I know of in the United States. Now, as you're drilling the well, of course, you have to penetrate. As you drill that well, you're going to penetrate shallow aquifers. And every drilling process you go through, you can muddy the water a little bit. Even if you drill a water well, your neighbor can experience some murkiness in their water, because just think about it, as you're drilling it, it's going to go through that aquifer, and water's going to slowly move over to the neighbor, but there's nothing poisonous or bad about it.
Okay. Yeah.
You've acquired data thousands of years old that is related to temperature changes. When you had a chart that showed that over an expanded period of time, that if you look at the chart, our temperature patterns seem to be on the mark, that they're actually where they should be. But if you only slice like a few years, then it looks extreme.
It does. And same with carbon dioxide. The temperatures it's cyclical. If you look back over the last several thousand years, that's the important time frame. One of the important time frames is going back to the first of the great civilizations that rose up, the Hittites, the Babylonians, the Assyrians. They rose up during a really warm period. It was called the Minoan warm period, also known as the Bronze Age. And so life was really good. Civilizations flourished. If you were Emperor Roy in a warming period during that time, your subjects would love you because you could provide a lot of food to them. It was the intervening cold periods that are horrific. Each of the cold periods, and the one after the Bronze Age, it started getting cold, and it led to what was called the Late Bronze Age collapse. And all of those empires within maybe less than 100 years collapsed. Famine, pestilence, and mass depopulation. It was called the Greek Dark Ages. And it didn't get better really until the Roman warm period, which was the time of Christ, where it warmed up again. And again, life was good. The Romans were using North Africa and Egypt as one of their primary food sources and grain deposits.
In the 16th century, wasn't there a mini ice age?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
the Little Ice Age.
Yeah, so there was a period called the medieval warm period that went from about 850 to 1250 AD. And that again, life was good, food was bountiful. And then it started getting cold. We went into the Little Ice Age, probably the coldest period the Earth has experienced in the last 10,000 years. And so again, life was bad. What history tells us is that during the warm periods, it's hugely beneficial to humanity. The cold periods were the one word I always use is horrific. It was a difficult time. You had to spend most of just trying to survive. And that's why very little happened during they were called Dark Ages. Because instead of inventing things and artwork, you're trying just to survive and feed your family.
Why? I mean, I remember being taught in school that CO2, naturally, the trees and the plants give us oxygen. We give them CO2 and so forth. How did the climate doomsayers turn it around, saying that, too much CO2 is killing the planet?
Well, it was a smart strategy on their part, because without CO2 is being generated by burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas. Society depends on fossil fuels to drive our society. There's a direct correlation between lifespan and the energy use, how much energy you use. The more energy you use, the longer your lifespans are. And so if you wanted to bring down Western society, if you want to bring down capitalism, America and the West, convince everybody you need to get away from fossil fuels. And we need to keep the third world developing countries from developing their reserves. It's really an anti-human philosophy and agenda that they're pushing. It's anti-human is a good terminology.
Well, we had a guest on, Jim Beach, who was talking about the size of nuclear reactors have become radically smaller.
He's talking about Gen 4.
Right. So the thing is that, what do you think about the idea of having these smaller nuclear reactors in key locations and possibly even improving our grid?
Well, that's a great idea. They're called SMRs, small modular reactors, because they can be trucked in, put up pretty quickly. We don't have to go through all the permitting process for the big reactors. And I know Chris Wright at the Department of Energy, Secretary Wright is a big proponent of that, and he's pushing it. I think it's a great idea. It's certainly better than intermittent wind and intermittent solar, these industrial scale facilities.
But it's harder to grift off of that.
Yeah, it is. And they grift. There's a lot of money out there.
What was that energy company that I forget the name of it, that Obama gave them $500 billion and they went belly up. And then a couple of years later, they gave somebody else $500 billion. Same thing happened.
500 billion here and there, it adds up to real money before you know
Exactly.
it. And a lot of it went to the their Democrat colleagues in these non-governmental organizations. Huge amounts of money.
It's amazing. There was you're near the Pittsburgh area, correct?
No, we moved out of the. I've escaped to the free state of Florida. That's what I'm calling it now. And that's how you say it, the free state of Florida. And there's
like that.
And the CO2 Coalition. I'm executive director. We're based out of Fairfax, Virginia. So I go up there at least once a month for a week. I'll be going up, I think, in 2 weeks again. And so we work there. We've experienced just phenomenal astronomical growth of our group in both membership and people are supporting us financially. Like it's unbelievable the support that we're getting. And I think a lot of it has to do is because we are unique. There's no other organization like us in the world because we stick to the science and stay out of the politics. We're a scientific organization. What's the
name of the organization again?
CO2 Coalition. CO2coalition.org.
Okay, we're going to be putting this up on the show notes and so forth.
CO2coalition.org. And so part of it, we're doing the science, but we're also have this education initiative. Our members came to me 3 or 4 years ago, and they were concerned about the state of science education in the United States. They were concerned that our students and our grandchildren and children were being indoctrinated into this climate cult, and they were being taught consensus science and groupthink. They were not being taught the scientific method. They were not being taught critical thinking skills. And only 2 states in the nation now teach the scientific method, which should be all of them teaching the scientific method. And it was replaced, this is probably 20 years ago, with it's called the Next Generation Science Standards, NGSS. And it's the Common Core of science. They've dumbed it down, and it's terrible. We did last year in 2024. We had successfully got the state of North Carolina to add the scientific method as part of their curricula. We thought we had Texas, but the timing ran out on us this year. We'll do it again next year. Texas is important because 14 other states follow what Texas does, because the textbooks for Texas are the same ones used by these other states. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to get that change.
That's a big problem.
People are concerned.
The textbooks that are approved are generally approved by people with leftist leanings.
Yeah,
I mean,
science.
Like that.
Yeah, and zero science experience. So we find just horrifically bad information in what they're being taught. Again, they're being taught there's a global climate crisis and it's our fault. And in fact, we go to conferences. We exhibited at 6 education conferences this past year. Most of those were homeschooling conferences because the materials we provide at no fee for homeschooling parents. We also have lesson plans that for each of our books, each of our videos, we have free downloadable lesson plans, which the homeschooling parents love. And again, we provide this at no charge. We want to lift up science teaching in America. We did go to the National Science Teaching Association's annual meeting last spring, and that didn't go so well. Well, actually, it went pretty well because I'd written and authored a report called Challenging the NSTA's Position on Climate Change. And we published it the first day of the convention, had it there, and we're handing it out to people, exposing how wrong this group had it, and they came down. The CFO and another head guy came to our booth, and he said, "You need to remove all your materials. You need to take these materials down." This is the National Science Teaching Association, and they're telling us to remove scientific material because it
More censorship.
yeah, because we
Of the truth.
criticized the NSTA because they got things wrong. And they said, "No, if you're not going to take it down, you have to leave." And I said, "So you're kicking us out?" They kicked us out of their annual convention for telling the truth.
It's like what they did to doctors that that resisted the COVID lies, and then turned various medicines into poisons and told everybody don't take these when in fact those were that was the see this leads to something I was going to ask you about the fact that there in the scientific community there has always been dialogue. There's always been here's my theory, prove it, back and forth, and sometimes there has been bigotry and single narrow-mindedness. But the thing is that never have I imagined that science was going to become one of two things. It was going to become a cult, and at the same time, what I consider true science was going to be demonized. Now, I know that you must have experienced that firsthand.
Every day.
Yeah. So the thing is that are we in a better place now?
We're getting there. We're getting there. We just had, for example, last week, we had a big event. Our chairman, Will Happer, emeritus professor of physics from Princeton, he sat down with Joe Rogan along with Dick Lindzen, a former board member. So if you go to the Joe Rogan experience, it was look for Happer and Lindzen. It was a fascinating interview.
Happer?
It's well worth your time. And I think it was last Tuesday. Happer Lindzen interview. It's well worth your time to go view it. I think it's been something like 3+ million views. He's on both Spotify and YouTube. Spotify is no ads. YouTube's problematic, at least for me to watch because they have so many
He's
ads.
also on Rumble, I think. Yeah.
He cut I'm not sure. He cut a big deal. I don't think so, but maybe. He cut a huge deal with Spotify.
Oh, wait, that's right. He got $100 million for that.
I think it might be, $100 million. And then he went back after that. He went to Spotify and said, "Hey, it was supposed to be just Spotify only." And then he says, "I want to be on YouTube." They said, "Okay." But it was a big event. So he got that message out to millions of people that have never heard any of this information. So, and we're reaching people we haven't seen before. I've got a series of 60-second ads that I'm going to raise money to have. I'd like to have broadcast television. You tune in Fox News at 5 or Jesse Waters, and here comes a CO2 Coalition ad telling the truth about climate change.
It's about time. It's good.
Well, it takes money. And
I was just going to say, unfortunately, it probably costs a lot. There was about a year or two ago, I remember reading about some geologists down in, I don't remember if it was South Carolina or Georgia, who were debunking the climate models and saying, no, this is wrong and so forth. Do you know anything about that? Do you know who that was?
It was probably John Christie and Roy Spencer at the University of Alabama at Huntsville. They're the best. Probably John Christie. Roy's a member of our coalition. But John's done a lot of work exposing. He looks at what actually the satellite temperatures are doing. They're probably if you've seen satellite data of temperatures since 1985 or whatever, 1980, it's probably from Roy Spencer and John Christie.
Did he talk about the ice cores and that showed the same amount or even more CO2 in the past than we've had now?
Well, they didn't. Yeah. Well, he doesn't. John's more with, and Roy are mostly dealing with temperatures, just the satellite temperature data, and
Okay.
but we do have ice core data that's pretty good quality data, and from that we can estimate both carbon dioxide levels and paleo temperatures going back to 800,000 years.
That hockey stick thing, okay? I know that it was debunked years ago, but most people don't know that it was faulty. Could you explain it to the viewers?
Yes. In fact, my newest book I'm finishing up is about Michael Mann and his disciples of disinformation. And so in that book, I detail everything that he did wrong. And one of the big things that he did wrong was he relied on tree ring data from bristlecone pines in the southwestern United States. Now, bear with me. I'm not going to go too deep in the geeky science here.
Good.
But if you choose your trees right, you can estimate relative temperatures in the past. So if you're in a very cold, let's say up on a high altitude area near tree line, what's probably going to increase growth is temperature. But if you're in Georgia or Florida, temperature won't have much it's mainly precipitation that drives growth in this case. And not or near an arid area. It's precipitation that drives growth. But if you're on the northern edge of the boreal forest in Canada, the trees growing there are accelerated by warming temperatures. But he chose these trees to be used, and the authors of the study, IDSO, was actually is a member of our organization. Their study, they looked at these bristlecone pines, and in their study they said, do not use these for temperature, to estimate temperature. The growth is being driven by increased CO2. Okay. But he chose those particular trees because it showed what he wanted. A huge warming starting at the beginning of the 20th century. And that was one. He's also using a part of his technique for analyzing huge amounts of data. It's rarely used. And what we've learned is if you just put in random noise, it generates what's called a hockey stick. So bear in mind, the hockey stick showed 900 years of gently decreasing temperature. And in the beginning of the 20th century, we had skyrocketing temperatures. And that's what he created. It's a very, very false, bad thing that he did. We found out that he fabricated data. He erased data. It was bad. He's never provided his data for people to double check on what he did. So we can't what they call replicate the study. It's as I was reading
it apart.
It was bad. It was scientific malfeasance.
Is he American or is he British, Michael Mann?
Oh, he's American. He's got a very, very large settlement. He sued Mark Stein, the acerbic commentator, for Mark Stein. Mark Stein said that his data was fraudulent, which it is, and he sued Mark for a bunch of money for defaming the famed Michael Mann, and it finally was overturned, and now it was a Canadian court, and the court ordered him to pay several hundred, I think a $500,000 settlement to Mark Stein. And he told them, he just said, I'm not, so he can't go, he'll be arrested if he goes to Canada.
And so will I, because of what I say about the Canadian government.
On a different note, because that's what we're all about right now. Since you kind of cleared up a couple of things today for me, and I think this is kind of related to your expertise. There's a installation up in Alaska called HARP, and I kind of see it as a bad thing. It's a good thing.
It's being used for bad.
I don't believe that's the case at all. I think that's misinformation, and it's easily. I mean, I mean, for all sorts of things. Will Happer, you heard me reference. He worked on that at HARP, high altitude
Radar projection? Is that what it stands for?
it's high altitude, but they're not doing anything of the kind. I mean, there's just some crazy conspiracy theories that the fires in Lahaina, Hawaii, were
Right.
that's just
But
ludicrous.
isn't its official purpose to be able to push the atmosphere? No.
The
Okay.
purpose was to research. It was a research.
Okay.
There's a lot of beware the conspiracy theories. I mean, we talk about geoengineering and things. And people go to the website. I have an article we wrote. In fact, Roy Spencer did on chemtrails or contrails. There's not this huge conspiracy of jets flying around releasing chemtrails. It's just not happening. Are there theories of people that they say, well, we could do this, and some of it we could do, but they're not. Think about that. I fly a lot. I mean, all these jets that I fly on are being alleged to be spewing chemtrails that block the sun. They're condensation trails, contrails.
But I've seen condensation trails that disappear, but sometimes these other trails, they're there most of for hours.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, ever since the government shut down, I don't think it's really coming from passenger planes. I think it's coming from other aircraft, because ever since the government shut down, the skies have been as clear as they were when I was younger. Okay, I mean, maybe it's my imagination, but
it's your imagination.
See blue skies, I see real clouds.
It's your imagination.
I don't see any trails at all.
No, that's not. That all has to do with the dew point of the atmosphere where they're flying. These
what with the atmosphere?
The dew point of the moisture in the air.
Right,
in
right,
very,
right.
very dry air, you don't get a contrail. But it's when the dew point is high, they leave these and they can linger for 24 hours if the dew point is right. And it's.
I used to say. I mean, years ago, I said no. My oldest son said, "Oh, the chemtrails are doing this." I said, "No, that's bullshit." But now we reversed. He believes that there's nothing, and I'm like leaning towards, yeah, they're doing something.
They're not.
Okay.
They're not.
Maybe you can.
Think of a conspiracy. This would have to be, and everyone would have to be.
But the problem is, lately, the last 4 years, a lot of the conspiracy theories are proving to be true. So you don't know what is true and what's not.
But this is pretty easily disproven. If you, I mean,
I hope so.
It is, and but there are people talking about doing stupid things. Yes, are they talking about it? Yeah, but it's not happening.
Here's another question I want to ask you. Is Mark Zuckerberg actually a robot?
No, he's not.
Okay,
no.
I wanted to lighten up the atmosphere a little bit.
What about a few years ago? And I remember the media just poo-pooed it and said, no, it's not true. But there was that scandal of the emails in Britain. That's why I asked you if Michael Mann was English. I didn't know if he was involved in that. But there was that scientific group over there, the climate group, that were sending emails and saying, no, just this and just that. We got to show this. We got to show that. In other words, they were making it up as they went along.
Yeah. And
what do you know about that?
Yeah, that was the. I'm drawing a blank on it now.
I can't remember the name of it either.
But it was Climate Research Unit there, and the emails were exposed where they're going to do Mike's, how he handled how going back and forth. That one of it was the correlations between tree rings and temperature broke down completely in 1960 and went completely opposite direction, and so that's the hide the decline is what you've heard. Hide the
direction
decline.
didn't like.
Yeah, it didn't work, and so they were exposed how they were colluding to cover up data and information.
Okay,
and Mann was part of that.
He was part of it. Okay, that's why I thought maybe he was English. I wasn't sure. I thought his name was connected to. One more thing I want to ask you about fluoride. What are your thoughts or on fluoride. I think it's a poison.
So
Mike,
do I.
Mike has told me that the Nazis first used it to spray over Jewish areas.
No, they put it in the water. They put it in the water to make the Jews more docile.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to. I don't do stuff like that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll stick to. I
Well,
don't.
stay away from fluoride. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah,
I've been using it. I've got it in my toothpaste. It's in my water. Been drinking it for now 70 years. You have too.
No, I don't actually. I have a filter that removes it, and I don't use any fluoride whatsoever. As a matter of fact, my dentist is upset with me, even though I'm fine.
Yeah, I'll stick to climate change and science though.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I'll say
a
that.
big deal anyway. That's a very big deal.
What do you have any thoughts on the fires in California?
Sure.
Okay.
It's not climate change.
It's not climate change. No, it's I mean, fires in California have happened forever. It's a combination of invasive grass species, invasive plants and these grasses. The recent one was really a grass fire that was up in California that burned down the Palisades, and it's the combination of these hot, dry Santa Ana or Diablo winds that come down out of the high New Mexico desert, and as they rush down, they gain speed and dry out. So now you got hot, dry winds moving down toward the coast. In this case, they were really big, 80, 90 miles an hour, and all it takes is one spark is what they got. And as they're coming down, it went for a beeline.
Well, that actually was somebody actually said that purposely. That's
the Palisades fire. They have a guy who they say did it on purpose.
His middle name was Climate Change, I believe, Bob Climate Change Nixon. But no, it was, but it could have happened anyhow, because in California, what they should do is bury their electric lines and have them underground, because it's the transformers that are sparking. You get these big winds and just one spark, and these dry grasses are that's the same thing we saw in Hawaii at Lahaina. They're called Lahaina winds. The winds come up out of the east, up over the mountain, drop all their moisture on the east side, and they get up to the top. They're dry, and they start rushing down, and they go for a beeline for the coast. And that's what happened. Again, we have a spark that set it off. But these things have happened since time immemorial. The big thing about fire is that fires in the United States, both size and the number of fires, are about 20% of what they were 80 or 90 years ago. So we're actually have much lower, less intense fires across the contiguous United States. And
not what you hear from the doomsayers. They're saying we have more hurricanes, more tornadoes. What we do have is earlier warning so that we know this is coming. And sometimes tornadoes, I'm sure, out in the Midwest or in the Southwest would come and nobody knew about it because nobody lived there. Nobody saw it.
Well, I don't know if you've realized it, but ever since Donald Trump renamed the Gulf of America, there's not been one landfalling hurricane in the United States. So I don't know. I think that's what's causing it. It's a conspiracy theory, but it works. But no, hurricanes are not increasing in either size or intensity. Tornadoes, the big EF3, F4, F5 tornadoes, are decreasing over the last several decades, since the 1950s. We know that for a fact. There's a lot that goes into that. It probably has something to do with a warming climate. But again, this year they predicted for hurricanes, this was going to be a really bad year, one of the biggest years ever, and we didn't get any. Of course,
there's one heading to Jamaica now. It probably hit already. They were saying it was going to be a really big one. What happened?
Class 5.
Category 5. I have class. This is a category.
Yeah, well, that's, hurricanes happen. They've always happened.
Yeah.
But
the climate doomsayers are saying, "Oh no, we're causing the hurricanes. We're causing the floods. We're causing the tidal waves. Even, I mean, how do you cause a tidal wave? You drop the ring off a cruise ship."
Yeah, they say a lot of things, but again, just there's a lot of bad information out there, and that's our job here as a scientist at the CO2 Coalition to to bring the science, the facts, and the data to the people.
Yeah, that's the real work of a science. I mean, I'm disappointed with who's the guy, the ex wrestler who he's very famous. He works at the American Museum of Natural History. Black fella, mustache.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Alexa, quiet. Alexa, cancel.
Yeah, I can't help you there.
She's
Yeah,
listening.
I can't remember his name now. It's three names: Michael Tyson something, Michael Dyson, whatever. Anyway,
Give it up.
I used to respect him, but lately he's jumped on board as a rabid climate change advocate against CO2 and all that, and I just think he goes against what he learned. And all I can think of is he's getting paid.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
a lot of people are coming around now. Hopefully, Bill Gates, this fellow Ted Nordhaus, and others, because sooner or later the truth will win out, and I think it is winning now.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah. I don't want to see Greta anywhere. Now she's concentrating on Palestine. Now she doesn't even have that because tentatively there's peace. I don't think it's going to last myself, but she has no dead horse to beat right now.
Well, so again, I consider her a victim because they took advantage of her at an early age and made her, the poster child for their movement. And now she's
Her grandfather's also a Rothschild, so you have to wonder why they pushed her into this. So.
Well, it's because she naturally has her pinky up, and that's important.
Anyway, is there anything else you want to tell the audience? Anything? We're going to promote your book. I'm going to mention the first book you wrote was Inconvenient Facts, correct?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. By the way, when we end the podcast, you have to stay on for a period of time until you're uploaded.
Just until I make sure you're uploaded. Otherwise, you'll get an email saying, "Hey, connect to the studio."
We record, but we always forget to do that.
Yeah, we should say it at the beginning, but
It's
that's
a
okay.
signature move on
All
our
right. Well, thank you for having me on.
Fantastic. Gregory?
Okay, thank you for coming. It was a very illuminating discussion, and not discussion, lecture.
All I can say to Roy is I saw him first.
Yeah, I asked him the other day, "Hey, was this guy the guy you saw at I forget what meeting it was he went to?
The Tea Party in
Party.
Allentown.
Yep, I was there.
And he said all he could remember is you had a mustache. He couldn't remember your name.
I remembered the information. That's what I remembered.
Okay.
And the information.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you.
Adios.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed this episode of The View from Here, Behind Enemy Lines, and we'll see you again next time.